They said the file didn't exist. For 40 years, the War Office denied it. No records, no designation, no surviving personnel. Yet in a locked steel drawer beneath the Ministry of Defense, archivists eventually found it. A folder stamped, "Most Secret. Do not photocopy." Inside were sketches of rubber tanks, spools of magnetic tape, and a single line typed in faded ink. Unit employed to deceive enemy through visual and acoustic means. It was the record of a British formation that waged its own strange war, one of illusion, sound, and shadow. A unit that fought with ghosts. When the Second World War began in 1939, Britain was unprepared. Real divisions could be counted on fingers. The Blitz tore cities apart, and invasion seemed imminent. Against such odds, the British military did something that armies rarely do. It turned to artists, magicians, and sound engineers. Out of paint, rubber, and recorded noise, they built a weapon the enemy could see and hear but never touch. They called it a force, though its name would change with every operation. It was the brainchild of a restless intelligence officer, Colonel Dudley Clark, who believed that deception was not a sideshow of warfare but its secret core. To Clark, every battle was a drama staged for the enemy's eyes. Win the illusion, and you win the war. His orders were simple. Make them believe what is not there. The early months of war were chaos. Real soldiers bled across Europe, men in muddy trenches, tanks clawing through ruined villages. In those same months, the deception officers learned their craft. They began with camouflage nets and painted decoys to protect airfields from German bombers. It worked. Luftwaffe reconnaissance photos showed destroyed planes that had never flown, bombed airfields that remained intact. From that success grew ambition. If you could hide real armies, why not conjure fake ones? By 1941, the British had an entire deception school. Its students were painters, sound recordists, film technicians, even stage magicians from the West End. They learned how light bends across open ground, how shadows fall from canvas towers, how engines sound different at a mile's distance. They learned that the human brain, terrified, rushed, half-blind, sees patterns first, truth last. In North Africa, Clark's first theater, they found their stage. The desert was perfect, wide, empty, echoing. With help from Royal Engineers, his team created phantom camps, rows of inflatable tanks filled with air compressors, fake pipelines built from painted cans, whole harbors laid out in canvas. At night, sound crews played recordings of engine columns through giant loudspeakers mounted on trucks. The desert carried the noise for miles. German scouts reported massed armor preparing to strike. They were hearing ghosts. In October 1942, the deception reached its height. Operation Bertram, the plan that preceded the Battle of El Alamein, moved hundreds of dummy tanks and trucks across the sand while the real force was hidden under netting near the coast. German aerial photos showed exactly what Clark wanted them to see: an Allied attack from the south. When Montgomery's true divisions hit from the north, Rommel's reserves were in the wrong place. The real battle lasted 12 days. The illusion had prepared it for months. The enemy never saw the painters, the carpenters, the sound men working in the dust. They slept by generators and ate tinned rations, sharing the heat and flies with the soldiers they were saving. They risked air raids as much as any infantryman, but they carried brushes instead of rifles. As the war spread across Europe, so did deception. Tanks rolled through bombed towns, fighter planes roared overhead. Every movement was watched by reconnaissance, every photograph analyzed. The ghost units began designing operational mirages, convoys that could appear overnight and vanish by dawn, Each vehicle was light enough for 4 men to lift. From the sky, they looked real. The Luftwaffe wasted fuel and bombs on shadows. The Royal Navy developed its own kind of deception. To confuse U-boats, engineers created acoustic decoys, mechanical foxers towed behind convoys, emitting propeller noises louder than any ship. Torpedoes chased the sounds instead of steel. Even beneath the sea, sound became camouflage. By 1943, illusion had become official doctrine. In Cairo, Clark's headquarters coordinated a network of deception specialists spanning the Mediterranean. Code names multiplied: Operation Cascade, Barclay, Foynes. In each, imaginary armies appeared on German maps, forcing real divisions to stay where they could do no harm. The tools were radio chatter, forged paperwork, and the flicker of fake campfires photographed from above. When civilians fled bombed cities, they passed studios where those same fires were recorded. BBC engineers, moonlighting for military intelligence, mixed battlefield soundtracks on steel reels. Engines, artillery shouted orders. The goal was acoustic illusion so convincing that even seasoned officers would swear an army was moving nearby. Those recordings became the first true sound weapons of modern warfare. In late 1943, Allied High Command planned something larger: the return to Europe. The invasion of Normandy would depend on surprise. If Hitler guessed the wrong beach, the war could end a year sooner. The deception would be called Operation Fortitude. It required not just trickery but art on an industrial scale. The deception troops, now veterans of North Africa, were transferred to Britain. Working in guarded compounds near Dover, they inflated thousands of dummy vehicles. Whole divisions appeared on English meadows. Wooden landing craft lined the Thames. Radio teams filled the airwaves with fake transmissions. To German spies and radar, the first U.S. Army group, under the famous General Patton, seemed real and ready to strike Calais. It never existed. The true invasion force was gathering to the west, at Normandy. On June 6, 1944, while Allied soldiers bled onto the beaches, the Phantom Army kept up its performance. Dummy landing craft continued to move in daylight. Sound trucks rolled along the Kent coast, broadcasting the noise of engines and chains over loudspeakers aimed at the channel. German observers reported an invasion fleet assembling opposite Calais and held their panzer reserves there for weeks. The ruse bought time, and time bought Europe. Behind the battle lines, radio operators tapped coded messages that would never be read. Every transmission was part of the act. Fake logistics, imaginary supply shortages, orders for non-existent regiments. German intercept stations, trusting their ears more than their eyes, fed the false data up the chain. Deception had replaced combat. Even within Allied ranks, few knew the full picture. Red Cross nurses treated men wounded by bombs that had fallen on decoy targets. Prisoners captured from ghost units maintained the lie under interrogation, insisting they belonged to vast divisions that only existed in paint and rubber. Propaganda posters urged secrecy. Loose lips sink ships, because silence itself had become a weapon. By the winter of 1944, deception reached its last cold brilliance. In the Ardennes, both sides used disguise. The Germans infiltrated Allied lines in stolen uniforms. The Allies replied with new phantom movements broadcast through the fog. On frozen fields, the British sound engineers replayed earlier battle recordings to mask troop redeployments. Snow amplified every echo. The battlefield became a hall of mirrors. When victory came the following year, the ghost units dissolved into silence. Berlin lay in ruins, the war finally over. The men of the deception services filed their last reports, stamped classified until 2045. They marched in no parades. Their medals, if any, bore the wrong unit names. Official histories listed them as Camouflage Section, Signal Group, or technical support. To the public, they never existed, yet the factories still remembered. The women who had welded real tanks now patched rubber ones. The artists who painted decoys returned to film studios, their wartime skills reborn as cinema trickery. In them, the ghosts lived on. Artillery still thundered at the front, but behind that thunder, the deception men listened, recording patterns for future study. They called it sound ranging. It would evolve into post-war sonar and electronic warfare, descendants of the Ghost Army's experiments. In a world rebuilt on signals and screens, illusion had become technology. During the D-Day planning conferences, those famous maps spread across tables. Half of what officers pointed to never existed. Deception officers had drawn fake divisions with the same authority as real ones. The war's outcome turned on ink and rumor. When bombers later flew over Europe, dropping propaganda leaflets and fake invasion warnings, they were continuing the Ghost Army's work. One operation even used recorded air raids broadcast from small planes to simulate attacks, scattering German night fighters on false trails. The technique would survive into the Cold War, reborn as psychological warfare. Only in the 1970s did the truth begin to surface. Declassified papers revealed the hidden structure: the Advanced Deception Section, Royal Engineers, the Special Means Unit, the Signals Experimental Establishment. Together they formed the British counterpart to America's 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, the original Ghost Army. Their combined work fooled the enemy in more than 20 major operations. Reports detailed everything: requests for 10,000 inflatable tanks, shipments of 500 pre-recorded battle tapes, blueprints for sound trucks capable of projecting a moving column 5 miles long. Each note ended with the same phrase: results, enemy misled, casualties nil. The veterans who finally spoke of it were old, their memories soft at the edges. They remembered laughter more than fear, the absurdity of painting shadows, of making engine noises with gramophones while real shells fell nearby. Yet they also remembered the weight of secrecy. "We couldn't tell our families," one said. "They thought we fixed radios. We were building ghosts." For historians, the revelation was unsettling. It meant that even in the most documented war in history, truth itself had been part of the deception. Every photograph, every signal intercept, every intelligence map, each might hide an illusion deliberately placed there. The war we think we know was partly theater, and yet beneath the artifice the purpose was simple: to save lives. A single fake division could pin down real German corps for weeks, sparing thousands of men from combat. The deception soldiers fought not to kill, but to mislead. In a century defined by industrial death, they turned creativity into defense. Their legacy stretches quietly into the modern age. Radar decoys, electronic jamming, digital misinformation, all trace their ancestry to the rubber tanks of 1942. In today's wars of signal and image, their ghosts still march. Somewhere in the archives of Whitehall, one final report closes the story. Typed on brittle paper, it reads, "Operation successful. Enemy deceived. Lives saved. No further comment." That is the epitaph of Britain's invisible army, the men who fought with illusion, whose victories were seen only by the enemy, and whose silence lasted a lifetime. They proved that in the darkest war humanity ever endured, imagination could be mightier than metal, and that sometimes the loudest weapon is a whisper.